Good evening, and welcome to our presentation this evening, HeartMath for Brain Health. Seeing that lots of people signed up for this event, so clearly it's something that people are interested in. So yes, what we're going to be doing is sharing with you some of the ways that HeartMath practices coherence breath work, both with and without coherence biofeedback, can help you to prevent premature aging of the brain. And also has the potential to help reduce your risk of dementia and also Alzheimer's. So, yeah, let's get into things without any further ado. First of all, I better tell you what HeartMath is, unless you already know what it is. Many of you will, many of you won't. But in essence, to try and keep it very simple, what HeartMath is it's a system. And it's a system which employs some different aspects. So one of the aspects, arguably the most important aspect of the system, is breath work. But it's a particular type of breath work, which we call coherence. Some people call it resonance. Some people call it 0.1 hertz. Basically, it's all the same thing. So it has an aspect of breath work to it. It also has an aspect of focusing on the heart, the physical heart. And the purpose of that is to build what we call interoception. So that's actually a physical awareness of the heart. So you can actually feel your heart, you notice your heart, you can even feel your heart beating. But there's another side to that, which you could say is maybe more, kind of, I guess, spiritual or esoteric, which is the identity side. So actually, in your heart, who are you really? What's your identity? What's important to you? What should you do with your life? All of those types of questions. So there's a heart focus, both physical and in terms of identity. There's another aspect which is to do with self-regulation. So we have these coherence techniques which focus on breathing, but they also focus on self-regulation, primarily emotional self-regulation. But what that means then is you're able to build the ability to regulate yourself, your physiology, first of all, then your emotions, and your thoughts and your behaviors. And then the other aspect of the system is, of course, the biofeedback, the technology. So we have what we call heart rate variability or coherence biofeedback, which enables you to practice coherence and to validate it, to bring it to life, to give it a measurement, which of course then means that you can develop and get better at it. So that's what HeartMath is. Let's move on then to this evening's subject, which is dementia. And as I'm sure many of you are aware, dementia cases are really rapidly increasing, unfortunately. So in terms of some of the stats, the World Health Organization reckons that about 78 million people worldwide will have dementia by 2030. And then that's going to rise even more significantly over the following 20 years to 150 million people. Now, Alzheimer's, so dementia is a generalized term. Alzheimer's is a specific disease within dementia, and Alzheimer's contributes, it's reckoned, about 60 to 70% of all of the dementia cases globally. And if we look at that as a disease, it's actually the 7th largest cause of death globally. And within wealthier countries like the UK, USA, much of Europe, it's actually the 2nd largest cause of death. Some data from the UK that the NHS recently produced is reckoned about 1 in 14 people over 65 and 1 in 6 people over 80 at risk of developing Alzheimer's. But actually, it's not all necessarily older people. Around 1 in 20 people are actually under the age of 65. And as you may or may not know, there are currently no cures for dementia or Alzheimer's, unfortunately. But we do know that there are ways that we can reduce our risk, significantly reduce our risk, and as it turns out, HeartMath is one of those ways. So that's what I'll be sharing with you. So we decided to create this presentation because some exciting new research has recently come out, which builds on top of an existing body of research around the benefits of coherence practice on the brain. But this research is led by a lady called Mara Mather. She's a professor of gerontology and psychology at the Southern California University, Los Angeles. She's also one of the top, actually the top 1% scientists in the world, as voted by scientific colleagues. And she was leading this large team of researchers, and they were conducting, and have been since 2018, when they started a clinical trial, which is funded by the US National Institute of Health. Now, this is entirely independent research. So HeartMath are not involved in this research, or rather, we're not involved formally, but the researchers decided to use our technology within their research. So what was happening is they took a cohort of participants who were practicing for 4 to 5 weeks, depending on the intervention, basically slow pace, what we call coherent breathing, and they were using our biofeedback technology, a product called the M-Wave Pro. So all of these people were using HeartMath HRV biofeedback. And the findings from the research, which I'm going to share with you, reveal really exciting, measurable benefits to brain health, to brain structure, and to brain function. And I'm not kind of like promising that this is a cure or anything, because it's not. There are no cures. But what it suggests is that these benefits really do have the potential to protect the brain against both premature aging and dementia. And I'll explain how and why. So in terms of an overview of the benefits, then, there's kind of 3 main pieces of research at the moment, which we're going to focus on. There's more research coming out, but this is where we're at right now. So the first piece of research, which has appeared in a very, very prestigious journal, Scientific Reports, which is part of Nature Publishing, this research shows a decrease in the production of Alzheimer's-related proteins. So a decrease in the production, but then also an increase in the clearance of these proteins in both younger and older adults. I'll show this in a little more depth in a bit. Next piece of research, or the next important set of findings rather, were an increase in cortical volume, particularly the prefrontal cortex and associated areas. So increase in cortical volume and coordination with those networks, and an increase in emotion regulation. Again, that was in both younger and older adults. There's 3 papers that have been dedicated to that area so far. And then the current paper, which is still in preprint actually, but it will be going into one of these very prestigious journals, I have absolutely no doubt. And it's a great paper if you want to read it in the preprint. This shows actually really interestingly that there was an increase in hippocampal volume in older adults. So that's an overview of the benefits. So what was going on then? Well, in brief, there's a link there at the bottom here that means you can dive into the methodology properly and have a look at all of the data as well. But in brief, what was going on was they had 162 adults. 106 of those adults were younger adults, so they were aged 18 to 35. And 56 were older adults, 55 to 80. So you've got these 2 groups. The study was conducted over a 7-week period. And at the beginning, during and after that period, a variety of biodata was collected. So that included things like all sorts of biochemical levels. It included heart data, HRV data, relating to the autonomic nervous system. It included brain imaging and psychological assessments as well. So a whole sort of battery of these different data collection methods and mechanisms. The cohort was randomized. And basically what happened is they were put into 1 or 2 groups. And what they did was they completed 4 to 5 weeks, depending on the specific intervention, but it was either 4 weeks or 5 weeks of daily practice. And what they were aiming to do with this practice was to either increase or decrease what the researchers call heart rate oscillations, which in our language is coherence. It's the same thing. And all the participants were using HeartMath's biofeedback system, as I said, the one that you can see on the screen here. It's called the M-Wave Pro. And what they were doing was there was 5 weeks of practice, or 4 to 5 weeks of practice. And what they were doing was beginning with 2 10-minute sessions a day, and then that moved to 15-minute sessions a day, and then went to 2 20-minute sessions a day. So spread throughout the 5 weeks, they were building from that 2 times 10 minutes up to 2 times 20 minutes. So basically what I'm saying is they started out doing 20 minutes a day, and they ended up doing 40 minutes a day. So that was what they were doing. And what I mean by increasing heart rate oscillations is this. So what you can see here, each of these, this lovely waveform is made up of these oscillations. Okay, and what these oscillations are, how they're created, is by what you're seeing is the increase and then decrease in the heart's rate. Okay, so the heart rate here is speeding up, heart rate here is slowing down, and the heart rate is speeding up again, slowing down again. So that's what you're seeing in terms of this rhythm. And what you can see is, it says about, look, that's 30 seconds there, that's 1 minute, 30 seconds there. Basically what you can see is in this case, breathing about 6 times a minute. Now, everyone was slightly different because they were all trying to work out what's called their resonant frequency. That was the way that they were looking to optimize or increase these heart rate oscillations. But that's what they were doing in one of the groups. So they were practicing coherence. The other group were practicing trying to decrease their heart rate oscillations. But actually, the way that this had been explained to them is that this was a good thing to do. And the way that they were trying to do it was to feel relaxed or calm. But they were using the biofeedback, in essence, to try and reduce these oscillations. So what we're looking at here is 2 groups. One group where we know that they're increasing their oscillations, and one group where we know they're decreasing their oscillations. But they both believe that they're doing something that's beneficial for them. So, first of these research findings, what the researchers discovered after the 5 weeks of practice was a decrease in the production and an increase in the clearance of Alzheimer's-related proteins. So as you may know, there's these things called tau tangles. There's these other things called beta amyloid plaques. Now, these are basically toxic proteins, and they are very widely recognized hallmarks of Alzheimer's disease. Some people think they're a cause, other people think they're a kind of an effect or a middleman. No one really knows, but basically what we know is that they are hallmarks, or everyone agrees that they're hallmarks of Alzheimer's. And what the researchers wanted to know was whether this slow-paced breathing using biofeedback, where you're either increasing oscillations or decreasing them, they theorized that would stimulate the vagus nerve pathways and would counter stress, so reduce stress, and the arousal pathways, basically, that could influence the production and the clearance of the taus and the beta amyloids. So they had, in this case, 108 healthy adults, 54 were younger, so the 18 to 35s, 54 were older, 55 to 80. They were randomized into these 2 groups, either increase or decrease the oscillations, increase coherence or decrease coherence. And in this case, so they did 4 weeks of the heart rate variability biofeedback practice. So they're using the technology to do that, and they're practicing, remember, to start with for 20 minutes a day, towards the end, 40 minutes a day. And what the findings showed was that the group who increased their oscillations, increased their coherence, they decreased the production and increased the clearance of the plasma amyloid beta levels and the tau levels. And this effect was seen in both the younger adults and the older adults. So what does that mean? What's the takeaway from all of this? Well, if we know that these levels of amyloids and taus are hallmarks of dementia and Alzheimer's, we know that this coherence breathwork with the biofeedback decreased the production and increased the clearance of those toxins, and that was seen in both younger and older adults. And clearly it suggests that coherence practice is something that could be done throughout life to try and keep these levels of taus and amyloids lower. So we didn't see this in the other group, even though the other group actually were calming themselves down, relaxing themselves. This other group didn't have these large oscillations. They weren't highly coherent. So this is interesting because, yeah, it means that a simple practice has the potential to keep these levels lower and therefore has the potential to be protective. Second piece of research then, the findings here were an increase in the cortical volume and the coordination of those areas as well, and an increase in emotion regulation. So we know, again, that dementia, inclusive of Alzheimer's, causes damage to the frontal lobes, the prefrontal cortex and the associated areas as well, the cortex. And what that means is it can make it difficult and increasingly difficult as the disease progresses to regulate emotions. Also makes it very difficult to regulate thoughts and think clearly, to regulate behaviors, as well as to do things like, to focus on tasks or switch between tasks, multitask, even things like feel motivated to want to do things. So we know that these are problems when we have damage to those frontal lobes. So in this case, we had the same size group against the same group. So 162 adults, 106 younger, 56 older, randomized again, and they're doing this practice where they're increasing or decreasing their heart rate oscillations at coherence. And what the neuroimaging revealed, so they were comparing neuroimaging before, during, and after. This revealed changes to the volume and also, interestingly, to the resting state connectivity of the networks involved in both emotion regulation and interoception. So what I mean by that is that not while people were practicing, but when they were in their resting state, the connectivity was improved. There was something about this practice that improved the connectivity of those networks, which are important for controlling your emotions, and also important in terms of interoception, which is this awareness of the information in the body, which then can provide you with an opportunity to respond, react, regulate. And so, unsurprisingly, then this also revealed an improved ability to what the authors call tune down brain and physiological responses to negative stimuli. So they had an assessment where they had to basically, try to, tune down their responses to negative imagery whilst being measured using neuroimaging. And we saw then that those people who had been increasing their coherence were able to do that much more effectively. Again, that was seen in both the younger and the older adults. So again, it would suggest that this is something that is useful to do, throughout their lifetime. So what's the takeaway here then? Well, these frequent negative thoughts and emotions that many of us experience and often experienced in later life when health declines, they're associated with cognitive decline. They're associated also with the increased levels of the toxic proteins, the taus and the amyloids, which we know are the hallmarks of Alzheimer's. We know that there's greater cortical volume and greater cortical coordination supports higher heart rate variability. And we know that higher heart rate variability is also associated with experiencing of more frequent positive emotions and better emotion regulation. So this becomes like a virtuous cycle. As you practice, you get these benefits. And so again, coherence breathing with the HRV biofeedback can increase the cortical volume and coordination. It can increase HRV and improve emotion regulation. And then the third of these findings then, which as I mentioned is in preprint, should be published fairly shortly, hopefully. What this shows is that we know again that progressive shrinkage of the hippocampus, particular part of the brain called the hippocampus, which is responsible for, one of the things it's responsible for is memories. That's a hallmark of Alzheimer's. It's one of the reasons why people, lose their memories or their ability to remember and recall things with Alzheimer's. So here, what we had was 162 adults, 106 younger, 56 older. They're randomized. They're completing again 5 weeks of the practice. And what we saw was in the older adults, the group who engaged in the coherence practice actually showed increased hippocampal volume. So the hippocampus actually increased in size. And when we drilled down into the data, or the researchers rather drilled down into data, not me, what they found was that the older adults who had what's called a greater average spectral power of the heart rate around 0.1 hertz is a frequency. What that means basically is those who had a higher coherence, measurably higher level of coherence, that correlated with even greater increases in volume. So the higher level of coherence, the greater the increases in the volume of the hippocampus. And there was no change in the younger adults. So why is that? Well, almost certainly it's because their hippocampus hadn't started to shrink yet. It's something that happens with age. So interesting that the older adults were able to, basically increase the volume of the hippocampus. So what's the takeaway here? Well, we know that the shrinkage of the hippocampus is associated with that premature aging. It's a hallmark of Alzheimer's. We know that coherence breathing with biofeedback can increase the volume. So that's really exciting research. It's all current, it's come out over the last year or so, but actually it builds upon an existing body of research around biofeedback and around slow, deep breathing, paced breathing, coherent breath work. So a few examples of some of the research that lends credibility to this or adds to this body. One piece of research shows that HRV biofeedback caused improvements in cognitive processes, types of processes that are crucial for everyday functioning, including things like memory, episodic memory, and they were maintained beyond the training period. So after people stopped doing the practice, those cognitive processes continue to benefit them. HRV biofeedback reduced depression and anxiety and improved attentional skills. This is in older people, and several participants also anecdotally reported that they felt they were sleeping better and that they were managing their stress more effectively as well. Deep, slow breathing, this is actually without biofeedback, so it's just the breathing. That enhanced the ability of elderly people to process new cognitive tasks and improve their cognitive functions. And so again, this highlights the potential for these types of simple techniques, in this case, just the breathing, as a means of preventing and perhaps managing dementia in older adults. Another piece of research showed a reduction in blood pressure. So we know that high blood pressure is a risk factor for dementia. Heart and the brain are inextricably linked. So this deep, slow breathing reduced blood pressure and increased peripheral oxygenation in elderly people with hypertension. Well, this is interesting and positive as well, because there are no side effects to this. And as I'm sure you're aware, there are side effects to some of those antihypertensives. Deep, slow breathing reduced anxiety and increased vagal outflow. What I mean by vagal outflow is parasympathetic activity. So the rest and digest, the part of us that we need to help rebuild us and to recover and keep ourselves healthy, which is measured by heart rate variability. So increased vagal outflow in older adults. And we know, therefore, then that reducing stress and anxiety and increasing the vagal outflow, increasing parasympathetic activity, can reduce dementia risk and has the potential to slow progression as well. And then the last one to mention is a really interesting pilot project. So this was a personalized precision medicine approach for Alzheimer's. So this did not include pharmaceuticals, it was personalized medicine. And what they found was significant improvements in a whole load of different biochemical parameters which are associated with cognitive decline. And that project actually included the use of another one of our biofeedback products, the Inner Balance, for a minimum of 10 minutes a day. So there's a very sound body of research evidence that these simple techniques, the breathing with or without the biofeedback, has the potential to, reduce premature aging of the brain and the potential to protect against dementia and Alzheimer's. So how and why does this work then? What's going on? Well, it's pretty complicated, but what we know is that the heart and the brain are inextricably linked. Okay, and what we know as well is the quality of the connection, the quality of the communication, signals that are going from the heart to the brain. These are really important for both organs. The quality of the communication from the heart to the brain is particularly important, it appears, and that's impacting overall health. So not just brain health, but actually overall the health. What we've known for a long time, is that higher heart rate variability correlates with greater volume, better connectivity, better blood flow to the brain areas which regulate emotions. So that is correlation, but, is that a cause? Is it an effect? We don't know. Certainly interesting. Some interesting evidence coming out that it may well be a cause. But what we know is that these larger heart rate oscillations, so this high coherence, what it seems to be doing is it's stimulating. So it's stimulating the heart and the brain. And what it's effectively doing is providing a workout. So it's benefiting the cardiorespiratory system, but it's also providing a workout to the brain. And what's exciting about that is that we can control it. We can intentionally modify our heart rate variability. We can do that in the moment. That's what those participants were doing with their breathing. And also, by doing it in the moment, we then have the opportunity to train it over time. Right, it takes practice, takes daily practice, and in the examples that we have here, it was taking 20 to 40 minutes a day. So I'm not saying it's not a significant amount of time, because it is, but there is the potential to train that over time and to increase heart rate variability over time. And that's important from the perspective as well of, with age, heart rate variability declines, with stress, heart rate variability declines, but we have the opportunity to preserve a healthy level of heart rate variability for our age. And actually, the research would show that we have the potential to even increase low HRV back to higher and healthier levels. And we certainly see that when we work with people in the HeartMath system. We see the amount of HRV they have increase over time if it was low to begin with. But they aren't the only benefits. So there's these brain benefits, which I've explained, but there are benefits also across the whole of us. So our body, our brain, our emotions, and our cognition as well. So in terms of some of the benefits to the body, what these techniques and practices do are in effect regulating the autonomic nervous system. And when you practice them, you can re-regulate the autonomic nervous system if it's gone out of balance, as it would have done if you'd been stressed or you'd had some sort of disease or accident or something like that. You have an opportunity to re-regulate, bring yourself back to balance. These techniques also are promoting homeostasis. So the part of us that regulates us back to balance and that enables us to repair and revitalize ourselves, that's promoted by these techniques. As I mentioned, it increases and protects our HRV, which is important for overall health. And as we practice these techniques, we're strengthening that heart-brain connection and the heart-brain communication, the variety of different signals that are going from the heart to the brain. So there's body benefits. The brain benefits, we mentioned we're stimulating and synchronizing these brain regions. We're improving brain volume, connectivity, the function of the brain. And we're also limiting and increasing the ability to remove these toxic proteins. In terms of emotions, we're improving that emotional self-regulatory capacity. And that extends then into meaning that you're reducing negative effect and improving positive effect. So you have an opportunity to have more choice around what you feel and to increase the ratio of positive and decrease the ratio of negative emotions, which also the research shows, positive emotions have benefits to our health. And then that sort of becomes this virtuous cycle, which begins to benefit your perception and your outlook as well. And if the brain's, working effectively and you're experiencing, balance in your emotions, a good ratio of positive emotions, the brain's working effectively, then that means that you can think much more clearly. Your memory will benefit as well. It will improve skills like creativity and problem solving. Well, all of the higher cognitive skills, actually, also thinking like, compassion as well, empathy, means that we tend to be able to be much more open and flexible, much more balanced in our processing of information as well. And then that can impact what's called sense of coherence. So sense of coherence is kind of different to coherence as I've been using the word up till now. What sense of coherence means is that you tend to see the world as kind of manageable, as understandable, as meaningful. And if you see the world like that, then generally you'll be much more resilient. It's when we begin to see the world as chaotic, out of our control, confusing, no purpose or meaning to it, like what's the point type thing, that can then begin to significantly impact our resilience, mentally, physically, and emotionally. So all these other benefits. But if we look at this more from a big picture perspective, then these techniques basically can help us when it comes to stress. We live in a very stressful world, most of us. It's chaotic, it's challenging, it's confusing, and stress, unfortunately, we know is not good for us. Stress biologically ages us, or sustained significant stress biologically ages us. But the good news is that effect of, that premature, that accelerated aging isn't necessarily permanent. So we do have the potential to reverse aging, so long as the stress alleviates. And this is what's key. If we have significant sustained stress for long periods of time, it will prematurely age us. But if we kind of like roll with the punches of life, we acknowledge that, there are stresses, because there always are, we'll never avoid them. But if we can regulate the frequency of the stresses in our life, if we can regulate the duration, the intensity of those particularly unhealthy levels of stress, then we've got an opportunity to at least age normally, or potentially, if you're really lucky, age a little bit more slowly. So This is a nice diagram actually from these researchers, Poganik, who was mentioned in New Scientist recently. So I just like a very simple diagram. So what it's showing you is biological age increasing up the vertical, time along the horizontal. So there would be normal aging, of course. What happens is when you experience stress, you get this increased aging. But when the stress comes to an end, and much of the time stressful periods in our lives do come to an end, then what happens is the body has this miraculous ability to basically renew and rejuvenate itself. So the aging is reversed, back to what would be a normal level of aging. So I think it's useful to keep this in mind. Yes, stress is damaging. Stress is often bad for us. Not always, but often bad for us. But we do have the potential, when we can alleviate stress, to actually make it an adaptive thing that can actually make us stronger, but we can also, get back to those healthy levels again. So these coherence techniques can enable us to do that. So enough talk, let's do them. It was half an hour of sciencey stuff. Let's get into what actually makes a difference here. So I'm going to share 3 very, very simple techniques with you. Some of you may know these techniques already, but this is basically what the research participants were doing, albeit with biofeedback technology. But the first technique is called heart-focused breathing technique, and it really is just breathing in a certain way. So what I'd like to invite you to do, I'm going to make this easy for us all by playing a video actually in a second. Is I want you to focus your attention in the area of your heart. Okay, so literally just bringing your attention, your awareness to the area of your heart. Many people can put their attention and focus in the body. If you can't, then simply put your hand in that area can be helpful. So just focusing your attention there. And then what you're doing is you're just imagining that your breath is flowing into and out of your heart or your chest area. And what you're doing is you're breathing a little bit slower and deeper than you normally would. Most people breathe far too rapidly and far too shallowly. So in terms of a suggestion here, give a go at inhaling for about 5 seconds and exhaling for about 5 seconds. For many people, if not most people actually, that will get you to a really quite high level of coherence. We're all a bit different. So for some people, maybe a bit slower would get you a higher level of coherence, but try the 5 seconds in, 5 seconds out, or if you prefer a balanced rhythm that's comfortable for you, whether it's a bit faster or slower. And what I'd like you to do as well is to just breathe in and out through your nose as you're doing that. There are lots of benefits to nose breathing, not least of which is nitric oxide, which is a vasodilator, so it helps with oxygenation and CO2 homeostasis. It's also antiviral and antibacterial. It also helps to synchronize brain activity. So breathe in and out through your nose. If you can, if you're congested or whatever, then obviously you'll need to use your mouth, but ideally it's in and out through your nose. And as you breathe as well, just make sure your belly's nice and relaxed. So sometimes when we say to people, focus in your heart or your chest, they breathe very high up. That's just focusing your attention or awareness. We want you to be relaxing your belly. We want you to notice your belly expand as you breathe in and contract as you breathe out. We want full movement of the diaphragm. So that's what I want you to be doing. You can do this obviously anytime, any place, because it's just breathing. Okay, so it's not like a meditation where you have to go and sit somewhere quietly under a tree or something like that. You can do it anywhere. You can do it on the bus, do it in the car, do it sat in front of the TV. I often do it in front of the TV or doing emails or whatever. So, it doesn't require a lot of effort, nowhere special to do it. And what I'm going to do actually is I'm going to share a video with you. So I'm just going to stop the screen now. I'm going to share a video which is from Syntropy, so another business that I co-founded called Syntropy, and we have apps, beautiful artwork, videos that help people to practice coherence breathwork. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to play you a video. It's only 4 minutes, and what I want you to do is, as the shape expands, I want you to breathe in, and as the shape contracts, I want you to breathe out. So just enjoy the visuals, enjoy the music, and we'll stop and carry on after that's finished. So, Okay, so hopefully you enjoyed that. Let me go back into my slides. Okay, so I've got a free gift to you later, which is access to some of those videos. Now, what was happening when we were doing that technique was it was influencing your heart rhythms, and it was creating these oscillations, putting you into coherence. So the video was 4 minutes long. What would have been happening for you if we'd had you hooked up to some of our biofeedback technologies, you'd have seen something like this. So each of these oscillations, remember, is being created by that slower paced breathing. And this is not what your heart rhythm, your heart rate variability looks like normally a bit all over the place. What you're doing is you're putting it into this lovely sinusoidal waveform, these repeating oscillations. So this is what's doing the magic, basically. Okay, so that was just breathing, just heart-focused breathing. Next technique we're going to practice is called heart lock-in technique. And so what we're doing here is we're breathing, but we're going to add positive emotion to it. So it starts in exactly the same way as the heart-focused breathing. So just focusing our attention in the area of the heart. We're imagining that breath is flowing in, flowing out the heart of the chest. We've got that breathing a little slower and deeper through the nose, relaxing the belly. This balanced rate, whether that's 5 and 5 or 6 and 6, whatever's most comfortable for you. But ideally, it's a balanced pace. Okay, so we just start doing that. And then what we're doing is we're activating and sustaining a regenerative feeling. So a feeling like appreciation for someone or something in your life, or care for someone or something in your life, feelings of compassion, love, gratitude, those types of feelings basically are very powerful for this practice. And then what you're doing now that you've activated that feeling is you're literally radiating that renewing feeling out, radiating it out to others, back to self. So the way I like to do it is when I breathe out, I radiate the feeling out to others. So you could radiate out to everyone who's in this webinar, or you could just radiate it out to everyone in the world, or specific people in your life. So radiate out to others and then breathe back into and for yourself. Okay. And we'll do that for a couple of minutes together. So I'm just going to pop myself on mute and over to you, just breathing coherently and then radiating out these feelings to others and back into and for yourself. Okay, so what we're doing there then is we're adding in this positive emotion, obviously, which has a variety of benefits. So not least of which is what you're doing is you're choosing to feel a positive emotion. So actually what you're doing there is you're kind of exercising your ability, you're strengthening your explicit emotion regulation. Well, most of the time we don't practice emotion regulation, but we have an opportunity to do that and to train it, to get better at it, basically. So strengthening this explicit emotion regulation, that can then begin to benefit us unconsciously as well, or in terms of implicit emotion regulation. Obviously, it feels nice to do this. And for many people, adding in the positive emotion benefits coherence levels as well. So for myself, I train lots of HeartMath coaches, and many of them will testify that it's when you really connect with that feeling that the coherence level increases significantly. You tend to get your best scores when you're using the biofeedback, when you're really connecting with that feeling. You completely forget about the breathing. You're just in that lovely feeling state. So yeah, real benefits to doing this. Now, the heart locking technique, again, you can do it anywhere, anytime, but it really is one that's good to do as a dedicated practice. So I'll do it every day for 20 minutes, 21 minutes actually is my practice. I do it with the biofeedback, and I like to just kind of sit quietly. I like to close my eyes, really connect in that physical feeling of the heart, but also those heartfelt feelings and emotions, and sustain that. And you know, you're really doing yourself a lot of good with this practice if you're doing it for 20 minutes or more would be even better. But yeah, 20 minutes or so, we see people getting some significant changes to their experience and their coherence baseline as well. So that's the heart locking technique. And then a final one for you, which you might think is a little bit weird. This one's, well, it's a HeartMath technique with a Kundalini yoga technique bolted onto it. So what I'm talking about here is breathing and squeezing, basically. So what we're doing is the coherence practice or the heart focused breathing, basically, with what's called a root lock in Kundalini yoga. So the root chakra in Kundalini and other forms of yoga, this is called the Mul Bandha. And what you're doing, you've got the heart focused breathing technique. Okay, so start doing that now. You focus your attention in the heart, breathing through the nose, slowly, deeply, nice and balanced, belly relaxed. Okay. Take a few coherent breaths first of all. And then what I want you to do when you feel ready is as you breathe in, I want you to squeeze your perineum. And if you don't know what your perineum is, basically what I'm asking you to do is squeeze your nether regions. To be even more blunt, squeeze your anus and your sex organs. Okay, so tense those, contract those. You know, if anyone's ever done things like pelvic floor exercises, you also know what I'm talking about. So as you breathe in, you squeeze, and you do that for the whole of that in breath. And then on the out breath, you release. Okay. So you breathe in, you squeeze, and you release as you breathe out. So that's the idea. Now, we'll do a minute or so of this together, but just to let you know what's going on here is when you do this squeezing, basically what you're doing is you're increasing the amplitude of your heart rate oscillations. You're increasing the amplitude of those coherent waveform, the oscillations. Now, that's really useful to be able to do, because what you're actually doing when you're increasing those amplitudes and you're doing this squeeze is you're pulsing cerebral spinal fluid into the brain. And cerebral spinal fluid is essential to the brain, does three main things. It protects the brain, so that's the fluid that kind of protects the brain from getting knocked around. It nourishes the brain, takes all the nutrients into the brain, but it also takes all of the rubbish out of the brain. So all of the waste, including the things like the tau's and the amyloids and all those types of things, one of the purposes of cerebral spinal fluid is to remove those. And this is what should be, well, it should be happening all the time, but it should particularly be happening during sleep. So this technique can be very, very valuable if you don't sleep particularly well, if your quality of sleep and duration of sleep is not good. Also, for many people as they get older, that interferes with sleep quality. Certainly, we know that people don't go into as much parasympathetic, rest and recovery, revitalization during their sleep. So this is something, again, that you could do throughout the day to achieve these benefits, getting this cerebral spinal fluid, getting enough of it, getting the protection and nourishment and removing the waste. And that could potentially make up for this not happening so effectively when you're sleeping. And many, many people just do not sleep or not getting the benefits. So we'll just do a minute of this because for many people, it's a bit weird. For some people, it can make you feel a little bit lightheaded as well. Many people, when they practice this, can actually feel pressure. I can actually, in my brain, I can feel pressure when I do this. So we just do a minute, and then I encourage you to practice it after this. Give it a go. So we're going to breathe in. So your 5 or 6 seconds as you breathe in, you squeeze all the way through that in breath, and then when you release the breath, again, in that 5 or 6 seconds release, don't release it too quickly, but you release the squeeze. And then as you breathe in again, squeeze and hold. And as you breathe out, release the squeeze. And again, I'll just leave you for another 30 or 40 seconds to just do that by yourself so you get a feel for it. Okay, so there you go. So yeah, take it easy with that one. Build up over time, unless you're already a bit of an adept through your yoga practice or whatever. But yeah, very, very powerful effect on the oscillations, as evidenced by this diagram. So what you're seeing here is up to this red line. This person's perhaps, so this person is me. I'm practicing coherence. They see lovely, lovely oscillations. I mean, very, very high oscillations anyway. Beautiful coherence, very high oscillations. Then at this point, I applied that root lock. I basically started doing the squeezing of the perineum. And what you can see is immediately increased amplitude in these oscillations. So it's gone from around about, these ones are around about 20 beats difference between the amount that the heart rate is speeding up and slowing down. And here it's increased to about 30. So there's a third increase in the amplitude of those oscillations. So really profound difference if you think about it, like these pulses going through the body and up into the brain. And the coherence is increased here as well. You can see that this is much more stable than this, which is sort of waving around a little bit. So this is very, very coherent, but there's a bit of a wave there, you can see. Whereas this, the peaks and the valleys here, almost exactly on the same level, tiny bit of variation. But yeah, again, if you on our biofeedback technology and practicing, this is what you would see as an impact of adding that squeeze to the coherence technique. So look, the majority of these benefits are simply through the breathing. Within the research, they were using the biofeedback, and there are various benefits to including biofeedback in your practice. So what are those benefits? Well, basically, you've got things like breath pacers and data screens. Okay, and what they're doing is they're helping you learn how to do this. They're helping you actually to find your sweet spot, so you can see for yourself where what breathing pattern gets you to that optimal, those largest, highest oscillations, your sweet spot. So it's helping you to measure that. Then it gives you a number. It validates it, which then means that you can practice and you can improve over time. But I think mainly for most people, certainly for me actually, I use the biofeedback because it's a habit of practice for me. I like to use it. I'm interested in the data. And so, yeah, it's part of that habit building for me, and it's a healthy habit. So there's some of the benefits of the HRV biofeedback. And just as a little sort of a guide as to what it's doing, if you're plugged into it, what you begin to see first of all is it show you your pulse. So then it's calculating. You have a device goes on the earlobe and attaches to your clothes. So the earlobe basically is what's collecting the heart rate data. It's very accurate. And then it gets the pulse first of all. It's measuring the gaps between the heartbeats, and then it turns that into heart rate variability data. So this is what you're seeing on this screen now, is this waveform. So this is in real time, the heart rhythm. You can see it's really nice and coherent. And then it's basically assigning a number to this level of coherence using a clever algorithm. And you can then see in this diagram beneath, as the level of coherence increases, this line climbs up, goes into the green, what we're looking to achieve, get into these higher levels of coherence. Some other data on the screen, you can see the pulse there. So it's measuring the gaps between these heartbeats to work out whether the heart rate's speeding up or slowing down. And there's also data here which relates to the activity within the autonomic nervous system. And we can see here that in this light grey area, what that means is that there's very narrow level of activity around those coherence frequencies, around 0.1 hertz. So that's basically what's going on with the biofeedback. And then you, on your session, you get towards the end, stop the session, and then you can do things like track your mood, and then it will give you an overview of the session as a whole. So in this particular example, it was a couple of minutes long, this one, and you can see that during this session, in this higher challenge level, there was a ratio of 5% of low or normal coherence, 18% where the coherence was getting higher, and then 77% where there was a very high level of coherence. And then it ascribes an average coherence score to that as well. So then you can use this over time to basically, improve and track. So almost there at the end. If you're interested in the biofeedback, then, well, I've taught you the techniques. They're free. You can take them away and use them. But if you're interested in the biofeedback, then we've got a special offer on at the moment. So 15% off of the Inner Balance. Well, actually, all of the products, M-Wave Pro as well. So 15% off of those products. That applies to all non-sale items. That will, you can access that through a code now. Code is HEART15. That code will be live until the 28th, midnight of the 28th of June. Then the code will stop working, but don't worry, because then we start a 15% sale. So then for a couple of weeks, we've got a 15% sale. And then actually after that sale is over, you can still use that HEART15. Sorry, the code is not HEART15. The code is BRAIN15. I've just realized. Do you know what? It doesn't matter. We've got two codes and they both work. You can use either HEART15 or BRAIN15. Both of those codes will give you 15% discount. Small error. I was obviously not coherent when I wrote that slide. Anyway, we have another free gift for you. So if you enjoyed that Syntropy video, then there's a load more of them over at the Syntropy YouTube. So if you just pop that link into your browser, you can see there are a variety of different Syntropy videos. There's individual videos. There's also videos that are back-to-back that give you a great big long experience as well. And if you really like Syntropy, then there's an app, and you can actually get a free trial for the app. So go to Apple or Google's app stores, and you can have a free trial. And then you've got it on your phone or your tablet, wherever you are. So you can enjoy those videos any place. You can even download them onto your phone and use them when you're not attached to Wi-Fi or anything. So final thing that you might be interested in doing, if you're really in the business of trying to look after your brain, which I personally think we all should be, Food for the Brain Foundation are a partner of ours. So they are seeking to educate people around Alzheimer's and the fact that for many of us, Alzheimer's is preventable. There are lifestyle ways that we can significantly reduce our risk. So there's an assessment which you can do, which is a great assessment, asks you about lifestyle, but it also gives you a variety of cognitive tests. So the link's here at the bottom. We'll also send it out after this session with a recording. Basically what it will do is it will give you a dementia risk index. So I can't actually remember exactly how long it took, 10 minutes, maybe 20 minutes. But anyway, it basically gives you this interesting sort of cog and lets you know in relation to all these different aspects of life, how you're doing. So this, I did this, I'm doing okay, could do a bit better, I'm doing okay. My risk is reckoned to be 38%. And what I can see is some of the areas where I really need to focus a bit more. So while I'm doing okay at the sleep side of things and calm, you know, I do these techniques. So I'm you know, looking after myself with regards to stress. Try and avoid too much sugar, you know, and I exercise and stuff. Some of the other areas I could focus on. I've been making sure that I get the right types of fats, probably too much saturated fats. So been looking at the right types of fats for the brain and making sure I get them in my diet, supplementing as well a little to get some of the extra B vitamins. I don't think I'm getting in my diet, antioxidants as well. Making sure that I eat lots of green stuff and healthy foods and pop an antioxidant every now and again. And on the healthy gut side of things, eating fermented foods and things, and I take a probiotic as well. So this was useful for me to work out areas where I could improve things even more. And just in terms of some basic recommendations, which you probably know many of these, but these are the lifestyle factors that are extremely important in terms of reducing our risk of dementia and Alzheimer's. Sleep is essential. Many people do not get enough sleep, or their sleep is not good quality for a variety of reasons. Interesting research recently from the BBC, I've put the link there, shows that the Mediterranean diet shows a reduced risk of 25% for eating all of this type of nice looking stuff. I had some salmon earlier today. Exercise, we know, is very important. Managing stress, obviously, is very important. Stress ages us. Socializing, something that a lot of us weren't able to do during COVID and had some significant problems for people's mental and physical health. So socializing, use it or lose it. What I mean by that is, you know, engaging your brain in stuff. And of course, the basics, you know, avoid smoking. It ain't good for you. And also moderating things like sugar and alcohol as well. So there's some of the general things that we can all be doing to look after ourselves. So that brings me to the end of everything. I've got all of the research references on this last slide. So if you're really interested in the research, watch the recording and pause this slide. Or actually what I'll do is I'll send it through with all the links attached, actually, and then you can dive down into that. But yes, that brings us to the end.